Sam Sneed's croquet-style putting ban, 1968. In 1967, Sam Sneed, one of golf's greatest players, started putting in a way that looked absolutely ridiculous. He'd straddle the ball like he was playing croquet, facing the hole directly with one leg on each side of his putting line. The 54-year-old legend was desperate to cure his yips, those nervous twitches that destroyed his conventional putting stroke. And it worked brilliantly. Sneed's scores immediately improved, his putting stabilized. He even won the 1967 Greater Greensboro Open using this bizarre technique. But here's where it gets interesting. The USGA and PGA officials watched this unfold with growing horror. Golf's most decorated champion was putting like he was at a backyard barbecue. And worse, it was working. The game's traditional image was at stake. By January 1st, 1968, they'd seen enough. The rulebook was amended under Appendix 2, 3B, prohibiting players from making a stroke on the putting green from a stance astride, or with either foot touching the line of putt. They never mentioned Sneed by name, but everyone knew. The 7-time major champion had to completely relearn putting at age 55. He switched to a side saddle method, still unusual but technically legal, and remarkably continued competing at the highest level into his 60s. The Sneed rule remains in effect today, a permanent reminder that even legends can't mess with golf's sacred traditions. And speaking of traditions being challenged by innovation, Karsten Soulheim's square groove ban, 2010. In the 1980s, Ping founder Karsten Soulheim created something that would change golf forever: square-grooved irons. These clubs, particularly the Ping I2, had U-shaped grooves that grabbed the ball like Velcro, creating ridiculous spin even from the rough. Suddenly, accuracy off the tee became optional. Players could miss fairways and still attack pins with surgical precision. The skill gap between elite ball strikers and average pros narrowed overnight. The USGA and PGA Tour panicked. In 1990, they began regulating grooves, but the full ban on non-conforming square grooves wasn't fully enforced until January 1st, 2010. Soulheim wasn't having it back in 1990. He sued both organizations, arguing his clubs conformed to the rules when manufactured. After years of legal battles, they reached a settlement in 1993, allowing pre-1990 Ping I2 wedges to remain legal through a grandfather clause. Fast forward to 2009, and Phil Mickelson deliberately put an old Ping I2 wedge in his bag at the Northern Trust Open, exploiting this loophole. Fellow pro Scott McCarron publicly called it cheating, creating a massive controversy. Mickelson was technically following the rules, but violating the spirit of competition. The incident forced the PGA Tour to negotiate with Ping again, finally closing the grandfather clause loophole. 20 years of legal battles, all because one man's innovation made the game too easy. The square groove saga shows how far golf's governing bodies will go to preserve the challenge of the game. And if you think that's extreme, wait until you hear about the anchored putter ban, 2016. In 2011, Keegan Bradley shocked the golf world by winning the PGA Championship using a strange-looking putter anchored against his stomach. It wasn't a new technique. Players had been experimenting with belly and long putters for years, but Bradley was the first to win a major with one. Then Adam Scott won the 2013 Masters with a broomstick putter anchored to his chest. Ernie Els captured the 2012 Open Championship with a belly putter. Suddenly, these training wheels for putting weren't just quirky alternatives. They were winning golf's biggest prizes. The traditionalists were horrified. Tiger Woods famously remarked that putting should involve some nerves and some feel, suggesting anchored putters eliminated the shakiness that makes putting golf's great equalizer. On November 28, 2012, the USGA and R&A announced the ban, effective January 1, 2016. Rule 14.1b would prohibit anchoring any club against your body during a stroke. The clubs themselves remained legal. You just couldn't stabilize them against your torso. The backlash was immediate. The PGA Tour initially opposed the ban before reluctantly accepting it. Players who had used long putters their entire careers faced a difficult transition. When the rule took effect, players like Adam Scott had to completely reinvent their putting strokes. Some adapted successfully, others saw their careers decline. The anchored putting ban remains one of golf's most controversial rule changes, showing how far officials will go to preserve what they consider the essence of the game. But distance concerns would soon create an even bigger controversy. If you're loving this video, subscribe now and help us hit 5,000 golf fans by month's end. The driver length cap, 2022. Bryson DeChambeau transformed himself into a human science experiment. He gained 40 pounds of muscle, increased his swing speed to ridiculous levels, and started bombing drives over 370 yards. His strategy was simple: hit it so far that approach shots became trivial, even from the rough. It worked. DeChambeau won the 2020 U.S. Open at Winged Foot by 6 shots, ignoring narrow fairways and simply overpowering the course. Golf's distance problem, brewing for decades, suddenly had a poster child. While Bryson used a standard 45.5-inch driver, he experimented with a 48-inch model in practice, the maximum length allowed. Phil Mickelson actually put a 47.5-inch driver in play to win the 2021 PGA Championship at age 50. The governing bodies had seen enough. On February 7, 2020, the USGA and R&A proposed Model Local Rule G10, allowing tournaments to limit driver length to 46 inches. The PGA Tour adopted it in 2022. Mickelson blasted the decision on Twitter. Stupid is as stupid does. He argued the rule targeted a small number of players while ignoring the real distance issue, the golf ball. DeChambeau never even put the 48-inch driver in his bag for competition, making the rule seem like a preemptive strike against a theoretical problem. But the message was clear. Golf's authorities would rather restrict equipment than watch their courses become obsolete. The driver length cap represents golf's ongoing battle between tradition and technology, with players like DeChambeau and Mickelson caught in the crossfire. And speaking of Mickelson's controversial moments, Phil Mickelson's moving ball penalty clarification, 2018. The 2018 U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills had turned into a nightmare. Rock-hard greens made putting nearly impossible. On the 13th hole of the third round, Phil Mickelson faced a slippery downhill putt that wouldn't stop rolling off the green. What happened next stunned the golf world. As his ball began rolling past the hole and down a slope, Mickelson jogged after it and deliberately hit the moving ball back toward the hole before it stopped. It was a shocking breach of golf etiquette from a 6-time major champion. Under Rule 14, 2018, hitting a moving ball incurred a 2-stroke penalty. But many argued Mickelson should have been disqualified for a serious breach of Rule 1-2, which prohibits exerting influence on a ball in play. USGA officials ruled it was only a 2-stroke penalty, allowing Mickelson to continue. He claimed he knew the rule and took the penalty deliberately rather than watch his ball roll off the green. The backlash was immediate. Critics called it cheating, unsportsmanlike, and disrespectful to the championship. Even longtime Mickelson supporters were shocked. In the 2019 rules revision, this was clarified as Rule 11.2, which explicitly states that hitting a moving ball on the putting green incurs a 2-stroke penalty, not disqualification. Mickelson's moment of frustration forced golf's governing bodies to draw a clearer line between strategic penalty taking and actions deserving disqualification. It was a rule clarification born from one of the most controversial moments in U.S. Open history. But slow play would soon create an even more persistent problem. Kevin Na's slow play policy overhaul, 2021. Kevin Na wasn't just slow, he was painfully, agonizingly slow. At the 2012 Players' Championship, he took 16 practice swings on one tee shot. He'd stand over the ball, back away, reset, and repeat. A single hole could take 15 minutes. Fans were frustrated. Playing partners were irritated. TV broadcasts struggled to maintain viewer interest during his rounds. But the PGA Tour's pace of play policy had no teeth. Players received occasional warnings and rare fines, but no stroke penalties. Na became the poster child for golf's slow play epidemic. At the 2016 Valspar Championship, he was actually booed by fans for his deliberate pre-shot routine. The situation reached a breaking point. In 2021, the PGA Tour finally implemented a radical new pace of play policy. They created an observation list of the tour's slowest players, who would be timed individually rather than only when their groups fell behind. Players now had 40 seconds to hit when it's their turn, with 50 seconds for the first to play in some situations. Excessive time violations would result in a 1-stroke penalty, something almost unheard of previously. While the policy didn't name Na specifically, everyone knew players like him were the target. The tour even created a new position, pace of play manager, to enforce the rules. Na has since improved his pace, but the policy remains his legacy. Golf finally acknowledged that time is valuable, and even the world's best players must keep things moving. But some equipment innovations would prove even more disruptive than slow play. The ball rollback rule, 2028. In 2003, Tiger Woods was making golf courses obsolete. He averaged 300 yards off the tee, turning par 5S into par 4S and rendering many hazards irrelevant. But by 2023, the average PGA Tour driving distance had reached 300 yards, with bombers like Rory McIlroy averaging 327. Golf courses responded by growing rough, narrowing fairways and stretching to 7,800 yards. The arms race was unsustainable. Historic venues like St. Andrews were running out of real estate to expand. After years of research and debate, in December 2023, the USGA and R&A announced the most significant equipment change in modern golf history. They would modify ball testing standards to reduce distance for elite players. The plan, announced in December 2023, will take effect in January 2028 for professionals and January 2030 for amateurs. The new balls would fly approximately 15 yards shorter for the longest hitters. It wasn't technically a rollback to old technology, but a new standard to prevent further distance increases. The reaction was divided. Rory McIlroy supported it, saying it would bring skill back into the game. Keegan Bradley called it stupid. Equipment companies worried about manufacturing challenges and consumer confusion. The rule wasn't aimed at any single player, but at an entire generation of athletes who had pushed the physical limits of the game. Unlike previous equipment restrictions, this one acknowledged that human performance had outpaced course design. The ball rollback represents golf's most dramatic attempt to balance athletic progress with architectural preservation. But some rule changes targeted not equipment, but specific techniques. Jordan Spieth's Scorecard Error Buffer, 2024. Jordan Spieth was having a solid tournament at the 2024 Genesis Invitational. After signing his second-round scorecard, he left the scoring area confident he'd be playing the weekend. Then disaster struck. Officials discovered Spieth had signed for a par on the 10th hole when he actually made a bogey. Under golf's strict rules, signing for a lower score meant immediate disqualification, even though his total score was correct. The three-time major champion was out of the tournament for essentially a clerical error. The golf world erupted in debate. In an era of electronic scoring and walking scores, should players still be disqualified for honest mistakes after leaving the scoring area? The PGA Tour responded swiftly. By April 2024, they implemented a new policy giving players a 15-minute buffer after leaving the scoring area to correct honest mistakes without disqualification. The Spieth rule acknowledged modern reality. With multiple scoring systems, walking scores, and digital leaderboards, the traditional scorecard was becoming obsolete. Players still needed to verify their scores, but the punishment now better fit the crime. Spieth never complained about his disqualification, accepting responsibility for the error. But his situation highlighted the need for common-sense modernization of rules that had remained unchanged for decades. The scorecard buffer policy shows how golf is slowly evolving from rigid traditions toward more reasonable governance. But some rules would target not errors, but deliberate techniques. Bryson DeChambeau's Compass Ban, 2018. Bryson DeChambeau isn't called the scientist for nothing. At the 2018 Travelers Championship, cameras caught him using a drawing compass on his yardage book. Not a GPS device, an actual geometric compass, the kind you'd use in math class. DeChambeau explained he was using it to determine the exact center of greens from the provided pin sheets. This gave him more precise measurements than other players, who estimated centers by eye. The USGA was baffled. Nothing in the rulebook specifically prohibited compasses. But after reviewing the situation, they invoked Rule 14.3, which banned unusual equipment that might assist a player in making a stroke or in his play. By June 2018, the USGA officially banned drawing compasses during tournament play. The compass provided information not readily available to all players through normal means. DeChambeau was frustrated but unsurprised. "They're taking away a tool that helps me be better," he said, "but I understand their position." The compass ban highlighted golf's uncomfortable relationship with technology and analytics. The same sport that embraces launch monitors and advanced statistics draws the line at simple geometric tools. DeChambeau continued finding edges elsewhere, from single-length irons to physics-based putting approaches. The compass ban didn't stop his innovation, it just redirected it. But some rules would target not equipment but physical limitations. John Daly's cart request clarification, 2019. John Daly, the chain-smoking, long-driving folk hero of golf, shocked everyone by winning the 1991 PGA Championship as the 9th alternate. By 2019, his body was breaking down. Severe osteoarthritis in his right knee made walking 18 holes nearly impossible. Daly requested to use a cart at the 2019 PGA Championship under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The PGA of America approved it, but controversy erupted immediately. Tiger Woods, who had endured multiple back surgeries, subtly criticized the decision. "I walked with a broken leg," referring to his 2008 U.S. Open win. Others questioned whether mobility was fundamental to championship golf. When Daly showed up smoking cigarettes while driving his cart between shots, the optics worsened. Critics argued someone truly disabled wouldn't be smoking while playing. The PGA of America approved Daly's request for the 2019 PGA Championship, creating discussion about standards for medical exemptions. In response, golf's governing bodies clarified their ADA policies, requiring more detailed medical documentation and emphasizing that cart use would be evaluated case by case. The Daly rule didn't change the regulations, but it forced clearer guidelines about when medical exemptions would be granted. The controversy highlighted golf's struggle to balance tradition with accessibility and legal requirements. Daly continues to use carts on the Champions Tour, where they're permitted for all players. His situation forced golf to confront difficult questions about what constitutes the essential nature of the game. And we have arrived to the end. If you love this video, subscribe and keep watching our next video shown here.